According to the US Census Bureau, there are 75 million people in America over the age of 60. And of those, 80% own a home. That's 60 million future home sellers. And for some, that means facing a few challenges that they may not have been prepared for. If you've been in your home for an extended period of time, there may be an emotional attachment, which makes it very difficult to leave the memories and what you're familiar with. Maybe you've been in your home a while, and although you've maintained it, you haven't updated it. So you're not sure what is actually worthwhile in order to get the house sold. And maybe just the thought of packing everything up and moving is just simply overwhelming. Well, the good news is you're not alone. These are very normal challenges, and I want to help you. I want to give you some tips, some strategies to help you navigate this process. I'm going to talk to you about navigating the emotional attachment to a house and how that can be a major roadblock. Preparing your house for sale. How can you prepare your house for sale without taking tons of time and tons of stress? How to prepare for actually moving and downsizing. If you've been in your home for a very long time, that is a big undertaking to figure out how that all pieces together. And then stay tuned to the end because I've got a bonus that's going to hit on the financials of moving. There are some things that you want to consider before you even start the process in the financial section, and I'm going to touch on that as well. All right, so let's dig right into challenge number 1, which is the emotional attachment. Now, selling a home at any age is an emotional process, but when you've lived in the home for decades, that emotion runs much, much deeper. And it's this emotional connection that makes it extremely hard to approach selling your home as a business transaction with a business-like mindset. And the first reason for that is because you have an attachment to the home. Now, if you've been in your home for an extended period of time, your home is way more than just a property on the market. It's a place where maybe you raised children. You've celebrated birthdays and holidays. You've had friends over and gatherings. You've created memories. And it's also a place of emotional security, which makes it really, really difficult to imagine yourself not there. So the one way you can get past that is to focus on the benefits of why you're moving in the first place. Maybe you're moving to be closer to family. Maybe you're moving because the house is just too much to take care of. Maybe you're just ready for a fresh start and you're ready to start creating memories somewhere else. The key here is to take gradual steps. You don't want to start packing up your entire house all at once in one day. That will be too emotionally jarring. So you want to take some gradual steps and start slowly on the process. Slowly start weeding out a room, slowly start decluttering. But the key word here is gradual. Now, another reason why you might be struggling with emotional attachment is that you have a reluctance to downsize. You know logically that downsizing makes sense. The house might be overwhelming, it may be a little bit more than you can take care of, but you're reluctant on the idea of downsizing. And as we get older, that fear of losing our independence is very real. And if you're connecting that thought, that emotional feeling of downsizing with that fear of losing your independence, that is absolutely going to make you reluctant to downsize. And then the other component is just having a resistance to change. If you've been in the home for many years, the idea of meeting new people, having a new environment, creating new routines can be overwhelming and daunting. So what is the solution? What can you do? Well, the first thing is to focus on the positive. And yes, that sounds all foo-foo-y and, well, think about all the great things, but in reality, you need to think forward. You need to think about why it is that you want to move in the first place. What is the move going to do? How are you going to benefit from that move? Downsizing can free up your time, your money, your energy. You don't have to maintain a large home anymore. Now you can spend that time, money, and energy on hobbies, traveling, and connecting with your family. And that actually would be my next tip, would be to connect with your family. If you are close to your family and you want to bring them in on the process, that can be extraordinarily helpful in helping you navigate and get through that decision-making process, because now they're part of the memories. You're not separating yourself from the memories, they're part of those memories. So it doesn't feel so drastic when you're making this big change. And the third reason for emotional attachment is that you might be grieving the loss of familiarity. Selling a home doesn't just mean leaving the property itself, you're also leaving what is familiar in your community. You're leaving your favorite grocery store, your favorite restaurant, your favorite place where your friends would gather, the bowling alley down the street, or the beach that you like to visit on Saturdays. All of those things that emotionally tie the community to your home, you're also leaving. And that in itself can be a very emotionally big hurdle. It can prevent you from looking into other properties, looking at your finances, starting to pack, decluttering, that in itself can set up a major roadblock because you're separating yourself from the things that make you happy, that bind you to that home. And the way you get by that is to start developing some of those emotional connections to your next home. So if possible, go to the area of where you think you're going to be living. If you have a home picked out, fantastic, at least the neighborhood, and start visiting the grocery store. Start eating in some of the restaurants. Start checking some of the local watering holes and get a sense of the community and spend some time there. You'll start to develop an emotional attachment there, which will help make the move in leaving the emotional attachment from your current community that much easier. So one more tip on emotional attachment, and that is to do a good old-fashioned pros and cons list. I want you to take a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle. On one side, I want you to list every single reason why you need to sell the house. Every single reason, whether it be location or the size or the work that it needs or financial, everything, every little detail, why you need to sell the house. And then on the other side, I want you to list every single benefit you're going to get from moving. Every little thing, whether it be closer to the family, or it's going to be a smaller, more manageable place, or it's going to be newer, or it's going to be less expensive, or whatever. Or maybe they have a pool and you don't have a pool. Every detail matters. You're going to have that list side by side, and then you're going to put this someplace where you see it every day. When you're going through this process, and this is a long, drawn-out process of first thinking about making this move to the point where you're actually there, you are going to have ebbs and flows. You're going to have that emotional attachment creep up on you when you're not least expecting it. And having that pros and cons list visible to get you back on track, to remind you why you're doing this thing in the first place, is going to be huge. So do the pros and cons list, and you can thank me later. Now, the second major challenge is preparing your home to sell. Now, you might be thinking just the thought alone of getting your house ready to sell is overwhelming. You've lived in the home for years, maybe decades, and it might need significant cleaning, repairs, or decluttering. Now, there are several reasons why this is such a challenge, and the first reason is going to be due to age-related limitations. When we get older, we all getting older, myself included, there are certain things that just become harder to do. Getting on the floor to scrub the floors, getting on ladders, lifting heavy boxes, things that we maybe could do when we were younger, but now is a little bit harder to take care of. So those things are definitely a challenge when you're trying to get your house ready to sell. Another reason it's a challenge is the accumulation of stuff. The longer we live in a house, the more we seem to acquire. And when you start getting ready to move, if you start thinking about packing, that stuff can be tucked into attics, into basements, into garages, into the back of your closet. And it is overwhelming to start thinking about it. When you start digging into it, you realize, I've got a lot to go through, and it's overwhelming, and you don't know where to start. Another reason it's a challenge is if you have any deferred maintenance items around the house. If you haven't had the time or the money to take care of some deferred maintenance, maybe you have a leaky faucet, or a stove that has a burner that's not quite working right, or you have some rot on the outside of the house and some trim that really should be taken care of. You know, all of these things can be very overwhelming when you're trying to get the house ready for sale. And then there's the time pressures. You want to take advantage of the market. You don't want to lose out on those high values in case they drop. You want to hurry up and sell, but you have to do all of these other things before you can get it on the market. And that is a significant challenge if you're struggling in all those other areas. So what can you do? How can you overcome these challenges so that you can move forward? The first way is to hire professional help. Cleaning services will save you a ton of time, and a lot of these services will actually do a pre-listing cleaning. So they'll do a little bit deeper than normal, and they'll make sure that they hit the hot spots. They'll make sure they clean the windows, clean the cabinet fronts, clean all the areas that they know that buyers will be looking at. There are senior move services. They'll come in, they'll help you declutter, they'll help you pack, they'll help you move some of the items and get rid of some of the things that you don't intend to take to your next house. And then on the repairs, hire a handyman. Even if you're used to doing it yourself, Have someone else come in. Take that off your plate as one more thing that you have to do to address some of those minor issues around the house, some of that deferred maintenance. The next thing you want to do is you want to focus on the high improvement, low impact repairs. Your goal is not to do a full makeover of the house. What you want to do is you want to look for improvements that are going to have the biggest impact, the things that are going to help you sell the house but aren't a sizable upgrade. You're not upgrading kitchens. You're not upgrading bathrooms. You're not maybe even replacing flooring. What are the things that you can do that's going to be low cost, low effort, things that are going to help you sell that house faster? You want to look at what you can make for minor repairs, what you can improve on with curb appeal, and then what staging can be done to make the house most attractive. Now, I did a few videos on this. You can check those out. I won't get into detail in this video, but there are going to be ways that you can improve the house without spending a ton of money and a ton of time. Now, my third tip is going to be to take it one step at a time. You want to break this process down into manageable chunks. I can't stress enough the importance of planning, and planning over a long period of time. You want to give yourself a big window to get this job done. Tackling a little bit at a time, it's called the Swiss cheese method, where you're poking holes in the project a little bit at a time, and before you know it, the whole piece of cheese is gone. My best advice is to get a calendar that has nothing on it, specifically for the move. You want to break this down into manageable chunks based on a timeline. I think it's super important to have a deadline, even if you don't have a significant reason for that deadline, but having something to work towards absolutely will help. Now, I did a video about this on decluttering. You may want to check it out, get a little bit more in detail on exactly how to attack the decluttering process. I'll leave the link in the description. Now, the next thing I want you to do is to reach out to your friends and family for help. Now, speaking from experience, this is not necessarily an easy thing to do. And I know what you might be thinking. You know, they're busy, they've got their own lives, you don't want to bother them, but you've got to reach out for help. That will make a huge difference in you being able to manage this whole big process. And the reality of it is they will enjoy helping as much as you appreciate them helping you. So don't hesitate. You've got to get them involved. Have them help you. It'll mean the world to this entire process. It'll make it go so much smoother. Now, as you're going through this process, it is so important to have a good plan, a good timeline. And sometimes it's hard to know when to do certain things, what you can do, what you should do. And for some of these things, I do recommend consulting with a local real estate agent, someone that you trust, that can help you decide which repairs to do, that can help you decide if you're going to leave some furniture for staging, how should it be staged? How should you set up the house? What's the best way to get the most amount of money in the least amount of time? Now, I have been in the real estate industry since 1996. I know a lot of agents, and I have put together a database of the top agents in the country. I'm happy to share that with you. Fill out the short form, and then I'll ask you a few questions so I can match you with the right agent that will give you the support you need to help you through this process. Now, the third challenge is going to be moving and downsizing. Now, the first reason why this is a challenge, and I've mentioned this earlier, is your accumulation of stuff or the accumulation of possessions. If you've been in the house for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years or more, you've accumulated a lot of things. And knowing what needs to go when you're downsizing can be a super, super difficult process. Another challenge is the physical strain of moving. If you have any mobility issues at all, carrying boxes down the stairs, moving heavy boxes, moving things around, moving furniture around, that is going to be something that bottlenecks your process as you get ready for moving. Another challenge is organizing a smooth move. There's a lot to take into consideration when you're moving, especially if you're moving state to state. Coordinating movers, there's transportation for vehicles, all those timelines with the closing of the house have to work together, and that in itself can be super overwhelming. Another challenge is sentimental attachments. Now, we talked about this earlier about emotional attachment to the house, but you might have sentimental attachments to items, to actual possessions, and you might have sentimental attachments to a lot of possessions that you cannot take with you to the new house. So deciding what stays and what goes can be super difficult if you have a lot of items that you're attached to. There's also the practical limits of space. If you know you need to downsize because it's practical, it makes sense, but you need to cut what you have in half, That can be difficult as well, knowing exactly what you need, what you don't need. You don't want to get rid of the wrong things, but you need to make some cuts somewhere. Knowing what to do can be very overwhelming as well. The other challenge is going to be your changes in your daily routine. You know now where to get gas, where your favorite place to get groceries, where you like to go eat. All of those things have been a routine for a number of years, and now you need to establish new routines, and that can be overwhelming. So how do you overcome these challenges? The first step is to start early. And you can start with the pros and cons list. Like I mentioned earlier, having that pros and cons list front and center so you know exactly why you're moving is crucial. Then you want to make a list of everything that needs to be done. You take that list and then you put it on the calendar. You have your calendar, you have your list, you have your pros and cons list. Having everything in writing, having something that you can physically see in front of you is crucial. It's going to help you get it out of here and onto the paper. And I find when I'm in a stressful situation, the reason why I'm stressed is it's all up here. We've got to get it out of your head and onto paper so that you can see everything in front of you, and then you can make logical decisions. The other thing you can do is you can hire professional help. Now, I mentioned this earlier. There are senior move specialists that will help you during the entire process. From the beginning to the end, they take care of everything. You do it in unison with them, but it is crucial. They provide the muscle, the physical aspect. They help you with the sorting. They help you with the purging. They help you with getting rid of things. So that might be an option that you might want to consider. The next thing you want to do is involve family members. That emotional support will help you with the downsizing process. And then the last thing is to get involved in the community that you're moving to. I think this is crucial and so important. If you get involved early on, if there are groups that you can join before you live there, so you can get a sense of the community, you can start building friendships, you get to know who's living there, that will help with the process. That will help break the emotional ties that you have to your existing home. And then you can start seeing yourself living in this new community. You can start seeing this new community as your new home. Now, as a bonus tip, there are some financial considerations that I just want to touch on. And for some, if this is your largest asset, it may come down to a financial decision on whether you move or not. So there are a few things that you want to take into consideration before you make the move. Now, the first consideration is going to be capital gains and what the financial impact is. Now, selling your home can have significant tax implications, especially if you've been in your home a long period of time and you've experienced a lot of appreciation. Now, it's important that I tell you that I am not a licensed financial advisor and will always recommend that you consult with a professional because everyone's tax portfolio is going to be different. But in a nutshell, capital gains is based on the profit that you make from your home. And that profit is taxable depending on if you are entitled to an exemption. Now, the exemption for a single person is $250,000. Exemption for a couple is $500,000. And typically, you will be taxed for anything outside of that tax exemption. Now, the amount that you get taxed does depend on your income tax bracket. So that is why it's so important that you talk to a qualified tax professional that will make sure that you're not overpaying your taxes. The other thing that you want to look into is that sometimes selling a home can push you into a higher tax bracket, which will affect your Medicare and your Social Security taxes. So you want to check that out as well. So at the very beginning stages, when you're doing your initial planning, when you're figuring out where it is that you want to go, why you want to go there, I would also meet with a financial advisor. Find out exactly where you're going to land financially. That may not play any part in your decision, but it might affect your decision. You might decide to go a different route if you have a negative effect on your Medicare or your tax bracket. You want to make sure you get all that information first. And then the other option is to not sell and instead tap into your equity. Now, I would highly advise you talk to a financial advisor before you head down this road. But there are two options that you could tap into, and that would be either a reverse mortgage or a HELOC. That would give you access to the equity without selling. And then when you sell, you would pay those options back. Those would require a whole video unto itself, but I would absolutely make sure that you do your research, make sure you talk to a professional because you don't want to make mistakes when it comes to either one of those two options. Now, planning ahead is key. I can't stress it enough. If you do the proper planning, it will alleviate the stress. It will allow you to have a more smooth process with your move. It'll make it more enjoyable and make that transition a little bit easier. Now, as you're going through that process, there are ways to avoid making mistakes, and you want to check out these videos on other seller mistakes to avoid. I'm Jen Sylvester, and I'm here to help you be a savvy home seller.